Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming after finals week. I know you're probably exhausted and recuperating, and I'm happy to have you join in this presentation about personal branding because I want it to be interactive and super applicable. My name is Linda Evans. I'm one of the assistant directors of Celsius on the career services side, and I've been talking about personal branding for about 5 years now. I think it's a very important topic for all of us to engage in. So welcome and be ready to participate. I'll be asking for your comments in the chat, and feel free to have a notepad or like a Google Doc or a Word doc open so you can take notes on how to further develop your brand after this presentation, because this is a pretty short presentation and it's not going to just be like one and done. It's a lifelong process. So we'll get started. First of all, we'll start with the definition of personal branding. And there's a lot of different definitions out there. A lot of people teach personal branding. This is the one that I have developed and been using, and I think it covers it pretty well. So Michelle, would you read this for us? Michelle is the other assistant director who's kind of hosting with me.
Yeah, sure. So personal branding is a concise, compelling way of communicating who you are and what you have to offer to your target audiences.
Thank you. And be ready to be called on if you don't want to read, just a couple of seconds of silence will tell me that. But just look at the definition again if you want to record it. Also, if you could turn your cameras on, that'd be great. If not, I understand. But it is a concise, meaning short, right? Compelling, meaning interesting and attention-grabbing way of communicating who you are and what you have to offer. So who you are and what you do to your target audiences. We're going to go through each part of this definition in action. And this will be shared afterwards, so don't feel like you need to record every single thing. So why is personal branding important? And I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think makes this worth your time and my time? Okay, so put in the chat box, please. What do you think makes personal branding important to work on? There's no right or wrong answer. Maybe it's like, because my mom told me so, or because my advisor told me so, or because I keep seeing articles about it and I want to see what the big deal is. Like, what are your reasons? Thank you for being honest, Natalia. So your friend told you about it. Great. Yeah, business is where personal branding started, but now it's kind of infiltrating every field. Any other ideas of why personal branding is important? It's a giant part of marketing your company and gaining trust from consumers. Yeah, definitely. So you're talking more about the company level branding. This is bringing it down to the individual, but it's kind of a similar idea. And another person says, because you need to distinguish yourself from other 7 billion people. Very true. Okay, thank you. Oh, one more. Personal brands are where there are stakes and you can identify with someone. Great. I love that you're putting these in your own words because that makes it more meaningful to you. So I'll share what I think makes personal branding important. The most important thing is because you have a brand already. And you always have, you always will. It's not something that you really to choose, like, oh, I think I want a brand, I don't want a brand. It's kind of like, I think of all these weird analogies, try to make it like sensible to people. Like, you have hair, right? So you should take care of your hair. If you don't take care of it, it's going to be all crazy. It's not going to like create a good impression on others. It's kind of like your brand. Like, you have fingernails, you should probably clean them and cut them. If you don't, they're going to go crazy and not serve you well. So those are some weird analogies, but you have a brand. You can't escape from your brand. And if you manage it, it will empower you to live a more authentic life in alignment with your values. And other people will remember your brand the way you intend them to remember your brand. Right? So those are two of the main reasons I think it's important to manage your brand. And if you don't manage your brand, because you always have a choice, like with your hair, fingernails, you may not know how to measure your own success. Like, how do you feel about yourself at the end of the day? And others will easily forget or misunderstand your brand, right? Because you're not in control of it. So it's whatever they think. Now, representations of your brand. You might think it's like your social media feed or, like posts and comments, and that is part of it. But the most simple and strong representations of your brand are your name and picture. So here are my versions of my name. I'm an immigrant. I grew up in China, moved to the US, and then I got married. So my name has changed many times over the years. This was my birth name, and then my adopted American name, and my mom's last name, maiden name. It's my middle name. There's obviously the initial, and then I got married and could use the middle initials. I could use a hyphenated last name, like it's becoming more popular now, or I could just use my first and last name. So I had some decisions to make throughout the years, like what is going to represent my brand. And then at the same time, I've gotten headshots every couple years as they've been offered at my university, or as I've bargained with my photographer friends, I'll correct your resume if you give me headshots. So I have several versions. I think this was in 2015. And then later on that year, I was like, anytime I can get a free headshot, I'm gonna take it. And then this was a year afterwards. And then this was last year. So, those are all professional looking, but if I were to use all of those, that might throw people off because they don't know which one's the most recent one. And if I were to intermix that with all the versions of my name, can you imagine how confusing that would be? If you looked up Linda Evans on Google, you'll probably find the 80s soap opera star. I didn't grow up with her, right? She's like blonde, huge hair, lots of hairspray, shoulder pads and all that. So obviously I look nothing like her. So I'm not worried about my brand mixing with her brand. But before I got married, you look up Linda Flores, they're all Hispanic ladies in their 50s. And, and I was like, oh, I don't look like them, so it's fine. But you have to be very intentional about what your brand representations are and to stick with that, be consistent. So now I've decided that I'm going to go with Linda Evans because I want to keep it simple. I don't want people to remember all these middle initials. And I'm going to use that everywhere, right? Like in my emails, in my voicemail answering message, in any presentation I give, on my resume, in interviews, that's the name I'm going to go with. And I've decided to pick this headshot out of the dozen or so that we got out of that photo shoot my friend took. And I use that everywhere. So pick one version of your name and one recent professional looking photo and use it everywhere. Okay, so keep it updated. As soon as you change it somewhere, like on LinkedIn, you don't have to do it on your personal social media, right? So I have my Facebook account, which is just friends and family. I don't use that for professional purposes, but for LinkedIn and for my Trinity bio page, and I have a website for my career coaching business. I use the same headshot just so people know and recognize instantly, oh, that's Linda Evans. Does Career Services offer headshots? Michelle says, we do, free of charge. You just need to email and we'll set it up for you. So that is a great question. Please note, I didn't pay for any of these. So you don't have to pay hundreds of dollars for a nice headshot, right? Like your school might offer it. So come to our office, or just have a friend with a good hand control, take a clear photo on a nice day with a pretty neutral background. Make sure you look your best and just, get different versions and see what works. So that is the most important beginning of your brand, is to pick a name and picture and stick with it. So next is to figure out who your target audiences are. And this is just like it sounds. Think of a target, right? And you're trying to hit the bullseye. You're not trying to hit all over the target. And everybody has slightly different target audiences. So these are groups of people that you want to grab their attention. You want to be like, hey, listen to me. I would like to talk to you. I like to get to know you. I want you to get to know me. And I've put these in kind of big buckets. So there are your friends and family, right? Because we're talking about your personal brand, not just your professional brand. So it's who you are to everyone you know, not just to like job search related people. So you want to make a good impression on your friends and family, right? And also your professors probably are important people to make good impressions on. And your coworkers, if you have a job on campus, off campus, you want to make sure you have good relationships with them, that they trust you, you trust them. And then recruiters, obviously, when you're looking for a job or internship, you want to make sure that they see and notice your accomplishments and who you are and what you want to offer, right? And supervisors, so the current people that you work for, whether it be a professor, if you're a TA or research assistant, or someone on campus, if you work on campus, or like somebody at a hospital you're volunteering for, just anybody that you report to, you want to target your message to them, like who you are and what you have to offer. So in the chat box, would you be willing to share like just one of your target audiences? Because there's different groups, right? So be specific. So right now it might be like, I guess finals just ended. But if there's any supervisors that you're working with this summer, or any recruiters that you have written to, or if you got a new roommate or something, like, can you share just one person or group of people from your target audience group? And as a career advisor at Trinity, my target audience includes STEM majors or pre-health students. So I'm not trying to appeal to every single major on campus. That's why we have multiple staff. But I'm trying to help and serve the STEM majors. So that's part of my target audience, as an example. Okay, the postdoc who would lead your research project. Perfect. Definitely want to make a good impression on them. Who else? Hiring managers in the marketing field. Awesome. Yeah, and if you want to get more specific, that might help you target your message even more, like what kind of marketing, or like what kind of companies, right? Do you want to work like tech companies, or like consumer products, or like in the government? I don't know, like the marketing is needed in every field. So, if there's any specific field that you're targeting, like that would help you maybe tailor your message a little bit more effectively. Anybody else? You have a blog that targets students looking to be more organized with school. Awesome. Yeah, so that's definitely part of your target audience, right? Are readers who come across your blog. And those readers tend to be students, I'm guessing. Okay, this is great. You're totally getting a hang of this. And so be aware of your target audience, because it will change over time. As you move on through college, as you move through your career, you may not care about those recruiters anymore after you get a job, right? You might start focusing on your peers at your new job, and then like the higher levels above you if you want to get promoted and stuff. So just be aware of how your target audiences change and how your message might change. Okay, now this is like getting into the homework categories of like taking the time after this presentation to really sit down and think about and write about your brand. And there's 5 buckets in this inventory, I call it, because an inventory is like when you go to the warehouse or the stock room and you count what you have, right? If you have a store. So think of this as like going into your own mind and heart and counting and articulating, listing the parts of your brand that you have within yourself. So it's not creating anything new, it's just counting what you already have. First of all, write down the characteristics of your personality. So your traits are things that, like words that people would use to describe you. Some of my traits include curious, I ask a lot of questions, or enthusiastic. When I like something, I get excited about it. Another might be ambitious, like people see me like trying to get another certificate or like get a new job or like whatever. Like I just always strive for something and people see that. So they would probably describe me as ambitious or some word similar. And then your passions, list things that really motivate and excite you. These are things that you probably already have a pretty good idea about, right? Within your major or things that you like to do as a hobby. What do you like to spend your time on? Make a list and see what really drives you, motivates you. And then your strengths are different in that they're things that you naturally excel in, that you don't have to work as hard as maybe others around you, right? Like if you have a natural ability to learn languages quickly, for example, that could be a natural talent. Or it could be like the ability to talk to strangers anywhere you go, right? Not everybody has that natural ability. So think of strengths that you might have. It could be work related or not, or in career services, but it could totally be a trait. Maybe a trait that you have also is a strength you have. And then values are your top principles for decisions and priorities. So this is really hard for us to identify within ourselves, because the things that we consider important, we think like everybody thinks they're important, right? And if you do an exercise that's related to values, it's often like, here's the list of 100 values and you cross out the ones that don't matter to you. And then you circle the ones that matter to you. And I've done those exercises so many times and they're not helpful because you don't narrow them down because you're like, well, out of these 100, 75 are really important to me. So what really are my top values? And I found a more effective way to figure out your values, which is notice when you get mad. Okay, so notice the times that you get frustrated, lose your temper, you get annoyed by people. And those are the times when your values are being violated. So I have done this exercise and it's really interesting because I don't get mad that often, but the times I've gotten mad are when others intentionally hurt, when somebody intentionally hurts others, like in mass shootings. That makes me really mad. It's like, why are you going out of your way to kill people? Like, and it's like, okay, well, what's the value underneath that? Underneath that, I really value respect as a basic human, right. And also safety, I think, is a big value of mine. And another thing that drives me nuts is when I'm stuck in a place where I have to breathe secondhand smoke. That doesn't happen too often anymore, thankfully. But if you live in a big city, like when I lived in New York City and I would walk behind someone who's smoking, I would get so annoyed because I didn't choose to smoke and their smoke is hurting my health. So I'm like, okay, well, what's the value underneath that that's being violated? It's my health. Does that make sense? So can you guys share in the chat box like one value that you might notice in yourself based on a time that you were really angry? And we all have multiple values, but the idea is to narrow it down into a short list so we can focus on them. Equality, awesome. Or equity, slightly different things, right? What else? I know this is probably a new way of thinking by yourself. What made you mad and what do you value? Honesty, yes, me too. Motivation, you hate seeing people waste their potential. Yeah. Freedom of choice, great. Okay, yes, this is exactly what you should be thinking about when you're trying to figure out your values. And the more you notice it when you're mad, the more you, so it'll help you be more productive when you're mad, right? So when you're mad, you can be like, wait, let me get curious. What value of mine is being violated right now? And then you can like calm down and figure it out. Okay, lastly, your inventory, figure out what your goals are. They should be really obvious, especially if you have like specific grad school goals, career goals, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. It could also be like, well, my goal is to run a 10K because I hate running, but I really want to challenge my body. Or my goal is to learn to play this song on the guitar because I love this song. and I've had the guitar forever and I want to learn how to use it better. It could be anything that you're striving to achieve, because that is related to your values and how you spend your time. Okay, so once you have all that like listed out, you can start thinking about how you're going to introduce yourself both in a written form and a verbal form. You might think of this as like an elevator pitch. I think that term is outdated, even though everybody knows what elevator pitch means, right? But we don't really use it in elevators as often anymore. So I call it the self-bio. So when you, and maybe you don't need the written bio as much when you're a student, but once you're a professional, I feel like people are always like, can you send us your bio? Like when we introduce you for this or whatever, or like when we put you on our website, when you get a job, like you're gonna be asked to write about yourself. So some things to help you frame your bio. It should be like about a paragraph, right? Like concise being a key part of personal branding. So think about some things from your past, present, and future. And that could include experiences you've had, like if you did a study abroad that really changed your life, or interests that you've had, like, since I was 10, I found a lost puppy. I've always wanted to help animals and now I want to be a vet. And projects that you've worked on, if you had a senior thesis or honors project or whatever, accomplishments, maybe you got like the best math student of the year or something, and then goals, what do you hope to do after college or in college, right? It could be like, I want to become president of this club, or I want to get a master's in computer science so I can go work on this. So think about key parts of your past, present, and future that are most relevant and interesting to your target audience. That helps you narrow it down, right? Because you don't need to say everything about yourself. You're all very fascinating and unique people, but to keep people's attention, you want to make sure it's relevant, interesting to them. Does that make sense? So I'm not going to tell you about my keychain collection because it has nothing to do with career services and what I help students with. But if I were talking to friends and family, maybe, because that's different target audience. And then for your verbal self-intro, which if we had more time, I would have you guys practice this out loud with each other in a classroom. But basically, it's your elevator pitch, right? It's how you introduce yourself. And I used to teach it. I think a lot of people teach it in a very scripted way. Like think of this like paragraph that you're going to say to someone. But really what happens in real life is it's a conversation, and it should be back and forth. It shouldn't just be like you reciting something about yourself. So I came up with kind of 3 steps. First, you want to connect with whoever you're talking to, target audience. So maybe note something you have in common, like, hey, I've never seen you before at this, I don't know, social event or whatever. Or, hey, how long have you been in this club? Or how did you choose this major? Like if you meet a new classmate or something, just find something to talk about that connects who you are together. Or if you're talking to like an interviewer in a job interview or an employer at a career fair, you might just say, thanks so much for taking the time to meet with me. That's an easy way to kind of open a conversation, is just like, thanks for chatting with me, or thanks for like allowing me to come interview for this position. And then once you have their attention, this is like a really short part, like maybe 1 sentence, then you can share key parts of your background. So this is kind of taking from the previous slide, past, present, future, experiences, accomplishments, interests. What do you want the person to know about you that is relevant and interesting? And this totally depends on your audience, right? So if you're talking to your postdoc supervisor in a research project, it's very different than if you were talking to your new roommate that you're trying to create a good impression on, or your internship coordinator, whatever, or your professor. So it depends on who you're talking to, because that you don't want to just have a script that you memorize, because it might not be relevant for one audience member. And then engage. Often people who get really nervous introducing themselves, they like give their spiel and then they freeze because they don't know how to wrap it up, and they don't know how to like continue the conversation, right? I see smiles because you've been there. I've been there too. It's really awkward. But the way to continue the conversation is invite them to respond. So this could be with a question. That's probably the easiest way. It's like, what do you think about this? Or can you tell me more about this? Or I was hoping to learn more about this from you. And it could just be a question, or just like, I'm wondering, blah, 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 or I'm curious, blah, 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 or I've always wanted to learn. So it gives them something to respond to, right? And it invites them to share, and hopefully they'll give their self intro, and then you can go back and forth based on that. So the goal is to start a conversation when you introduce yourself verbally, and not just like leave them hanging, and not focus solely on yourself. Okay, so the next part is their personal mission statement. This is something that I think of as the core to your brand. It is the compass that guides everything you do, right? When you are camping, you need a compass to know where to go, not to get lost, to feel safe. You have a direction and purpose. That's exactly what your personal mission statement does for you. And I have a picture of this note in a pocket because I think of it as like your go-to, I don't know, message for your life. Whenever you need it, you pull it out of your pocket, you read it, and you get re-inspired and move forward. So some tips on creating a personal mission statement is it should be one sentence, very short, very concise, as short as like it could fit on a little piece of paper in your pocket, because you want to be able to memorize it and bring it to mind whenever you need. It should inspire and motivate you to focus and prioritize your time and energy. Weed out a lot of noise that could waste your time, drain you. But it should not be something that makes you feel burdened or dragged down, or like, oh, my parents told me to do this, so I have to do this. Like, it should be something that comes from within and really inspires, motivates you. So a tip on writing one is start with key verbs and nouns. So verbs being actions, right? And nouns being like principles and values. And then just draft and redraft until you get that sentence that flows really well, that you can memorize in your head. And then it should be something that can be achieved every day, regardless of what your external circumstances are. Meaning, if you are jobless, if you are a stay-at-home parent, if you're volunteering, if you are retired even, you can still accomplish this personal mission statement. It's not specific to a job. So here are some examples to inspire you. These are from some former students I had, and they all happen to be artists. So, they have a very artsy theme to it, but obviously yours doesn't have to be. So I'm going to have you guys read this actually. Xander, can you read the first one? Natalia, the second one, and Katie, the third one? Thank you so much.
To find, create, and share beauty to enrich my own life and the lives of others.
Thank you. So very short, right? But really dense. What are the verbs in here? You guys can see. You can shout it out.
Right away, I can see find, create, share, and enrich.
Exactly. Perfect. And what are the nouns you see? I see you mouthing. So beauty, life, lives, others, right? There's an equal number of both, which is coincidental. It doesn't have to be. Okay, Natalia, can you read the next one?
Okay. To use and expand upon the talents I've been given in order to educate, motivate, uplift, and inspire people the way my heroes inspired me. Okay, all right.
Yeah, that one's a little longer, right? Any thoughts?
Should I look for verbs and nouns?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So verb, use, expand, educate, motivate, uplift, inspire. And then the nouns are talents, people, and heroes.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so it's easy to spot. And when you write your own mission statement, I found that it's helpful to write it like a long paragraph or even a whole page essay first, and then going through and looking for keywords that you repeat, or having someone else read it. I did that with a friend. Like, he gave me like a page and a half of a personal statement, and he's like, Linda, I don't know how to like narrow this down. So I just like highlighted words that he said pretty much every paragraph. Words like create and share, I was like, well, those definitely have to be part of your mission statement because that obviously is very important to you. And he's like, oh, I had no idea. So it might help to have other people look through yours. Okay, Katie, take it away, the last one.
To help each individual feel valued, heard, and understood through facilitating their connection with the arts in their community and abroad.
Okay, what were the verbs and nouns you found?
The verbs I have feel, facilitating, and then the nouns I have, let's see, connection, arts, community. Then there's a lot of adjectives thrown in there.
True, yeah, great, thank you so much. So these are just examples, like I said, and if you notice, they're all one sentence, right? They're all like pretty inspiring, uplifting, even if they're not your own personal mission statement. And they are accomplishable whether you have a job or not, regardless of what your circumstances are. So you can create beauty anytime, anywhere, right? You can expand upon your talents anytime, anywhere. You can help others feel valued, heard, and understood. So think of things that are going to be long-lasting and versatile in your own life. So, okay, next thing is your non-brand. So if you think of this picture frame as like defining your brand. So your brand is everything within that frame, right? It's your target audience, it's your inventory, your self-intro, mission statement, and then everything outside is your non-brand. So these are things that you're not working on improving and that you're not apologizing for. So you've probably never thought about this before. So but let me give you an example. Something that I'm not very STEMmy. I mean, I mentioned this before, like I don't really enjoy or do well in science, math, technology, engineering. I've learned to function well enough, but they're just not a big part of my life. Things that I'm not working on, I'm a career advisor. I'm not an academic advisor. So I don't help students pick out their classes, right? That's not a part of my brand. That used to be part of my brand. I tried it, didn't like it, came back to career services, and I'm not apologizing for. So things like crafts, I don't like crafts at all. And a lot of my friends do. They're like, oh, it's so relaxing to, refurbish a cabinet from Goodwill or to like create these origami figurines or like to like make jewelry or whatever. And I just have no interest in that. And I'm not apologizing for it. I used to try. I'm like, maybe I need to pick up these hobbies. I just didn't enjoy them. Or things like when I lived in Utah, which is a very outdoorsy state, people will be like, let's go rock climbing, let's go mountain biking, let's go do all these like winter camping in the snow. Like, that's not my idea of fun. So I learned to own my non-brand. So these are things that you're not working on, you're not apologizing for, things that you're just not, right? So can you guys think of at least one thing in your non-brand? Something that you naturally are not, or don't enjoy doing, or not good at doing, and you're not apologizing for it. It's very empowering when you can own your non-brand. And Michelle, you're free to share as well. And Tao, don't see your face, but love to hear from you. Not good at math, ever. That's okay, me neither. The last class I took in math was 11th grade. Didn't take any in college. Got away with that somehow. What else? Okay, so you're a business double major, you're not good at data, but you love analyzing it. Oh, that is a really good distinction. Great. That's okay, because there's lots of people who love data, right? Anybody else? Not a salesperson, that is a-okay. And maybe sometimes you have to try something, you're like, oh, I think I would like this, right? I think I'd be good at this, and you're not, and that's totally fine. You're a chemist, but you're not crazy about research. It trains your soul. I love that. Yeah, be honest about it. I really want to get a PhD, but I really don't like stats. So it's like, oh, that's gotta overcome that hurdle somehow if I'm gonna get a PhD. Okay, so think about your non-brand, because that will save a lot of energy and time, because your non-brand is kind of bigger than your brand, right? So if you just focus on your brand, ignore the non-brand, don't worry about what others are doing. Don't worry about, like, if all your friends are going to grad school and you're not, it's fine. As long as you focus on what your purpose is. Is there one more comment? Oh, you love stats. Great. See, that's why you don't need to be good at stats, because other people love stats. Okay, so let's see, where are we at? How do others experience your brand? Okay, this is involving other people now. So all of this so far has been just you and yourself, you're thinking, you're writing. But when you want to know how your brand actually lands, you know, within your target audiences, you can just ask them. So first of all, this is something I've done multiple times since I was in 8th grade, actually. Big nerd. I used to ask people every few years to describe me in 5 words. And you can start with a small sample group, like 20, 30 people. And you can ask them through just like texting or like posting on social media, you know, and asking people to comment. Or I prefer using a Google Doc. It's free. It's very like easy to organize. And just creating a Google form, like, can you describe me in 1 word, in a 2nd word, in a 3rd word, 4th word, 5th word, and then that collects it into a spreadsheet for you. So collect and then organized all the words you get. So if you ask 5 words from each person, you ask 30 people, right? That's a lot of words to sort through. And then you can look for patterns. So I like to like put all those words into 1 column in a spreadsheet and then organize it alphabetically and see which words show up the most often. Or you can also go through and like look for synonyms. So like I've had people describe me as ambitious, driven, and determined, and those all kind of mean the same thing. So look for patterns and then adjust accordingly, meaning if there's any words that people use to describe you that you don't agree with, that you're like, wow, how did they get that? Like, that's not me at all, right? Then you can try to adjust your behavior to match who you want to be as a person. And this is not, like, I want to make it really clear, this is not to like change who you are to please other people. This is to become more of who you want to be as a person. So for example, I really care about people and relationships, but the first time I did this survey, I got a lot of words that made it sound like I was aloof or reserved and kept to myself. And I was like, man, is that how I come across to people? I don't, that's not me. So I gotta be more friendly because I care about people and friendships a lot. So I adjusted my behavior, and then I did that survey again a couple years later, and people thought of me differently, like more in alignment with how I wanted to be seen. Does that make sense? So don't try to change who you are unless it's like to improve yourself, to make yourself more of who you want to be in alignment with your values. So this could take, just a couple days. It's really fun. Just try it with like a few people, 20, 30 people, and maybe just like increase that number and see if that feedback changes. All right, so to wrap up, once you have really understood like who you are, what you have to offer, how your target audience views you, then you can really focus on how you communicate your brand. So I've created this table to show all the many ways that we communicate, right? Like communicating just means sharing messages, sharing ideas. And COVID has really changed that in a quick way, in that in person is very rare nowadays and video is much more common. So obviously Zoom, we use quite often. And then when you go to career fairs on campus now, it's all through Handshake, and it's not in person, right? You don't have to like get paper copies of your resume and walk around the gym. Like it's just sitting in front of camera, make sure you have, you are dressed well still, but it's a very different format. And then higher view is this increasingly popular way of interviewing where you record yourself answering questions and they watch it later, right? So it's very nerve-wracking because you have a timer, you have to watch yourself, and it's so different than sitting across from a live person, but it's becoming the way of the future. So probably all get used to it. And then of course, voice. So synchronous meaning at the same time and asynchronous not at the same time. Right now we're all synchronous, right? But then people who watch this webinar later will be watching it asynchronously. And then written and visual. These are probably the most important in terms of career job searching. Obviously, you need a good resume, you know how to write good cover letters, write professional emails, have a presence on LinkedIn and social media. And then these are optional, like if you have blog posts or web portfolios, you want to make sure that those have updated professional looking content. And then when you're chatting, instant messaging, those forms of communication are also important. So as you do all of these different modes of communication, there are different things to consider. Through all of them, your name and your name needs to be consistent, remember? So that's your representation of your brand. And then your intro and self intro and bio should be pretty consistent, as long as it's targeted to your target audience. And your word choice and fillers. We all have filler words, whether it be, or right, or, there's so many different ones, but be aware of what yours are and if they just distract from your message, because then you want to adjust and make sure that it doesn't hurt your brand. When you are visually communicating with someone, there's all of these things you got to be aware of, which you already know, like body language, eye contact, maybe not as much through Zoom, but clothing, grooming, your facial expressions. Do you look angry? Do you look bored? Do you look mad? And then your hand gestures. I've learned that hand gestures help people be more engaged. So I'm trying to use my hands more, even though I naturally don't. And then when you're writing, of course, having clean, proofread language without mistakes and typos, but also on your documents, have the same header for both your resume and cover letter, right? So it's kind of like your own stationery. So use the same font, same formatting. And then in your email signature, you can include things about yourself, like maybe your personal mission statement. I have that on my business email for career coaching. I have my personal statement right there underneath my name, so people know what I'm all about. You can also have links to your social media in your email signature. You can have your pronouns, and then your headshots, should be the same everywhere. And then fonts, colors, and logos, that's kind of optional if you have like your own blog or website or something. And then tactile greeting just means any type of touch when you're meeting someone in person. So when we go back to being in person full time, I don't know if we'll still be shaking hands, right? Maybe we'll just be fist bumping or elbow tapping or foot tapping or bowing. I don't know. I love hugs personally, but I think that's probably going to take a while to build back up to hugs when we all feel safe and comfortable. And I don't hug everyone, of course, but people that I know when I'm seeing again. And then your background could say a lot about your brand. Right now, I don't have a virtual background. This is a photo, or this is a painting of New York City, which I love. Sometimes I do have a virtual background of flowers, usually, because they make me happy and cheer me up. So whatever is going on behind you, just make sure that it's not distracting, that it's not going to make people think you're disorganized or messy, or, like naked roommates walking behind you. Make sure you try to have a professional looking background, especially if you're interviewing. And then when you're speaking, your voice tells a lot about who you are and what you're all about and your intentions. So when you speak, make sure you don't speak too fast or too slow, or your tone is not too high or too low. You got to find the right balance for who you are. And then your volume, make sure people can hear you. I know people tell me all the time that they can't hear me, that I whisper or mumble. So I have to work on that a lot. But yeah, these are all things that we need to be aware of as we're communicating our brand, because you have to start with who you are, who you want to be, and then you can focus on how you communicate it. So to wrap up, I think I'm a little over, sorry about that. But to wrap up all the basic parts of your personal branding is your name and your headshot, right? If you don't have a good headshot right now, that's okay. Like make that a summer goal to get someone to take one of you or come to career services. And then target audience, figure out who you're trying to target right now. It will change over time. Take inventory of who you are. And then just do like a draft of your written bio. Put yourself into a paragraph. This could work, or this will be useful for your Handshake profile and your LinkedIn profile, because there's a place for you to write a bio of yourself so that employers can get an idea of who you are. And then verbal intro, you know, when you're meeting anybody for the first time, think of some highlights and some way of connecting them, bring them to the conversation. Your personal mission statement, this would also be a great project over the summer or anytime, because that will help you focus the direction you want to go in life. Your non-brand, think of all the things that you don't care to be, that you're not apologizing for, because that will save you a lot of time and energy, not trying to please everyone and do everything. And then what I call the communication audit. So just looking at the two last slides and being conscious of what are the ways that you communicate and how are you communicating in those things? Where can you improve, right? Do you need to cut out filler words? Do you need to dress more professionally? Do you need to proofread your emails before sending? And just finding ways to always improve and refine your brand. So here's my email. If you have any questions, we'll love to chat about it. But I'm open to questions now as well, if anybody has anything they'd like to ask.